Nearly 4,000 years ago, scribes in ancient Mesopotamia pressed their styluses into wet clay and recorded something that still echoes across time. 8 kings, 5 cities, 241,000 years. The numbers seem impossible. The claim seems stranger still, that kingship descended from heaven, that civilizations rose and fell before a great flood wiped the slate clean, and that we, everyone alive today, are merely the inheritors of a world rebuilt from ruin. If the Sumerians are to be believed, ours is not the first attempt at civilization. It may not even be the second. But what did these ancient scribes actually record? And why have millions become convinced that somewhere beneath the deserts of Iraq lies proof of societies that vanished before history began? The document at the center of this mystery sits in a glass case at the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford. It is called the Weld-Blundell Prism, an 8-inch clay block with 4 sides, each inscribed with neat columns of wedge-shaped marks. A wooden spindle once pierced its center, allowing readers to rotate it like a catalog of kings. It was discovered in 1922 during excavations at Larsa, an ancient city in what is now southern Iraq. British archaeologist Herbert Weld-Blundell recovered it from the dust of a world that had been forgotten for millennia. The clay prism contained what scholars came to call the Sumerian king list. The document was not unique. Over the following decades, archaeologists uncovered more than 16 additional tablets and fragments bearing portions of the same text. They came from Nippur, Susa, Larsa, and sites scattered across Mesopotamia. The consistency was striking. Across centuries of copying and recopying, the essential structure remained intact. A succession of cities, the kings who ruled them, the lengths of their reigns. It read like a ledger of power, tracing an unbroken line from the beginning of time. What caught the attention of scholars? Then came the flood. The flood swept over, the scribe recorded. And after the waters receded, kingship descended from heaven once more. A new line of rulers began. Their reigns were measured in centuries, then decades, then years. The numbers gradually approached what we might call normal. This pattern, impossible lifespans followed by a cataclysmic reset, electrified alternative historians. Here was an ancient document, they argued, confirming what oral traditions across the world seemed to suggest: that advanced civilizations flourished in deep prehistory, only to be destroyed by catastrophe. The Sumerians weren't recording myths, they were preserving memory. But what did mainstream scholars make of it? In 1939, Danish Assyriologist Thorkild Jacobsen published the first critical edition of the Sumerian king list through the University of Chicago. His study transformed how researchers approached, but cracks began to appear. Later scholars noticed that the king list contradicted itself. Dynasties it presented as sequential had actually ruled simultaneously, their territories overlapping. Kings it listed as ruling from one city had inscriptions proving they'd ruled from another. The document's claim of a single, unbroken chain of kingship was fiction, a political narrative, not a historical record. 3 factors had obscured this for decades. First, the document's sheer antiquity commanded respect. Scholars hesitated to dismiss a text that predated the Hebrew Bible by a millennium. Second, the absence of competing records left the king list unchallenged. Most Sumerian archives had crumbled to dust, and what survived was fragmentary. Third, the internal consistency of the list, its formulaic structure, its repetitive phrasing, suggested authenticity. It read like bureaucratic record-keeping because it was designed to. Assyriologist Piotr Steinkeller proposed a different explanation. The Sumerian king list, he argued, was propaganda. It had been created during the Akkadian dynasty to legitimize Akkad's claim to rule by tracing an unbroken line of power from Kish, the first city to hold kingship after the flood, directly to Akkad itself. Later rulers had adopted and amended the list, inserting their own dynasties, adjusting the numbers, adding new cities. The Weld-Blundell prism, for instance, ended with the Aeson dynasty, suggesting it had been commissioned by an Aeson king eager to present himself as the rightful heir to Sumerian tradition. The antediluvian section, those 8 impossible kings, was a later addition. Steinkeller and others noted that not all versions of the king list contained it. Some began directly with Kish, skipping the flood entirely. The kings before the waters, it seemed, were not ancient memory. They were political invention. This raised a question. Why would scribes fabricate a prehistory spanning hundreds of thousands of years? The answer lay in the numbers themselves. The Sumerians did not use base 10 like we do. They counted in 60s. Their system gave us the 60-second minute, the 60-minute hour, the 360-degree circle. Reign lengths in the king list were recorded in units called sars, ners, and sasses, multiples of 60. A sar equaled 3600, a ner equaled 600, a sasi equaled 60. The numbers on the clay tablets weren't meant to be read as literal years. They were symbolic expressions of power and divine favor. When scholars converted the antediluvian reign lengths back into the original notation, a pattern emerged. The durations weren't random. They were round numbers, easily divisible by 60. They followed mathematical conventions that any Sumerian scribe would have recognized. The 8 kings before the flood weren't historical rulers with impossible lifespans. They were legendary figures assigned formulaic reigns to signal their mythological status. The Sumerian king list did not prove that 6 civilizations had risen and fallen before ours. It proved that the Sumerians understood the power of origin stories. By anchoring their rulers in a cosmic lineage, kingship lowered from heaven, preserved through flood, restored to humanity, they transformed politics into destiny. But what about Eridu, the first city named in the list? If the Sumerians considered it the birthplace of kingship, was there anything beneath its sands? In 1946, Iraqi archaeologist Fuad Safar and British archaeologist Seton Lloyd began excavations at Tel Abu Shahrain, a mound in the desert southwest of the ancient city of Ur. Locals had known the site for centuries, but no sustained dig had ever been attempted. Safar and Lloyd suspected the mound concealed Eridu itself. They were right. Beneath an unfinished ziggurat built during the 3rd dynasty of Ur, the team uncovered layer after layer of earlier construction. Temples stacked on temples, each built atop the ruins of its predecessor. In total, they identified 18 distinct occupation levels, some dating to the Ubaid period, roughly 5,400 BCE. At the lowest level, they found the remains of a small shrine dedicated to Enki, the god of wisdom and fresh water. It was one of the oldest religious structures ever discovered. The excavation revealed something remarkable. Eridu had been inhabited for nearly 5,000 years. Generation after generation had worshipped at the same site, expanding the temple, raising the platform, transforming a mud brick shrine into a towering ziggurat. The Sumerians weren't wrong to call Eridu sacred. Archaeologically, it was among the oldest continuously occupied religious sites in human history. The team documented pottery styles evolving across millennia, painted vessels giving way to plain ware, decoration growing simpler as populations expanded. Fish bones and net weights confirmed what the myths described. Eridu had been a fishing community before it became a holy city. The technology visible in the lowest layers was not advanced. It was basic. Stone tools, reed construction, no metal, no writing. What came later emerged slowly, through trial and accumulation. But the dig revealed no evidence of civilizations predating the known archaeological record. No impossible technologies. No advanced societies wiped from existence. The pottery evolved gradually from earlier styles. The architecture showed slow refinement, not sudden appearance. What Eridu demonstrated was not a forgotten past, but a remembered one. A place so ancient that by the time the king list was written, its origins had passed into legend. Not everyone accepted the scholarly consensus. Alternative researchers pointed to the specific language of the king list. Kingship descended from heaven, they noted, was not a metaphor the scribes invented. Sumerian mythology described gods walking among humans, teaching arts and sciences, establishing order before returning to the sky. The Anunnaki, deities who featured prominently in Sumerian religion, were credited with creating humanity and presiding over civilization. To read the king list as pure fiction, critics argued, was to ignore its cosmological context. Some proposed that the antediluvian kings were not humans at all, but divine rulers, their reign lengths reflecting not calendar years, but astronomical cycles. Perhaps the wobble of Earth's axis, perhaps the conjunction of planets. Others suggested that the numbers encoded genetic information, population counts, or technologies now lost. The theories multiplied. The evidence remained elusive. What the scholarly record does show is that the Sumerians, like many ancient peoples, thought of time differently than we do. Their myths described ages of the world that stretched back far beyond any documented history. Their kings claimed divine ancestry. Their scribes recorded reigns in numbers meant to signal not duration, but legitimacy. A king who ruled for 36,000 years was not a man who defied biology. He was a figure of cosmic significance, his reign blessed by the gods. The Sumerian king list, then, is not a census of lost civilizations. It is a monument to the power of narrative, a document created not to record the past, but to shape the future. Every dynasty that held power in Mesopotamia added to it, altered it, claimed its authority. The antediluvian kings were less a memory than a mirror, reflecting back the ambitions of whoever held the stylus. And yet the questions linger. Beneath the sands of southern Iraq, the ruins of Eridu still wait. Italian, French, and Iraqi teams resumed excavations in 2019, producing detailed maps of the Ubaid period cemetery and its surrounding structures. New technologies, ground-penetrating radar, satellite imaging, environmental DNA analysis, are revealing patterns invisible to earlier archaeologists. The story of humanity's earliest cities is still being written. The Sumerian king list records that 8 kings ruled before the flood. It names their cities. It counts their years. Scholars have spent a century debating what those numbers mean. But one fact remains uncontested. Nearly 4,000 years ago, someone believed this account mattered enough to carve it into clay. They wanted the kings remembered. They wanted the cities preserved. They wanted the flood recorded. The prism still rotates in its glass case. The names still line the columns. Alulim, Alalgar, Enmenluana, Ziusudra. The flood swept over. Kingship descended again. The question is not whether 6 civilizations existed before ours. The question is why, across millennia, humans keep telling stories of worlds that came before, and what we hope to find in them. The Sumerians recorded 8 kings ruling 241,000 years before the flood. Scholars call it myth. But if it's only myth, why did scribes across Mesopotamia copy it for 2,000 years?